Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Sinner. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we are picking up where last episode left off. Sadly, it turns out the body they found is Percy's. They did say, based on, it does seem like, first and foremost, that she did fall, but it doesn't seem like there's any exterior thing. Still doesn't mean no one pushed her there. Not in the physical sense, but more so in the, whatever she was going through, whatever, damage people, everyone kind of calls to her, led to that, but even her grandma later on is because everyone else in the family, everyone around just wants to accept it and just kind of move on because everyone thinks it's for the betterment because it's right, that family's been through enough and maybe this is their opportunity to find a way to kind of move forward, to kind of heal in a means. But Meg is the only one who feels like she hasn't given up when it came to Percy, because she knows that someone's responsible. It's my granddaughter, she would have come to me if there was something like that. She would know not to kind of go to that extent. So she thinks all the other stuff that she was reading, all that lunar stuff, she feels like that's kind of a sign of yeah, there was definitely something else at play here. But like I said, all the evidence is pointing to Percy jumped herself. So what Harry saw was real. He just kept being oh, maybe it wasn't. But the complication is, now that she is gone, I thought was kind of interesting that, afterwards, Harry's walking with her, in his subconscious, his manifestation of her. And she's like, why does it matter? You already got the answer. None of it matters. I'm already gone now. You found me, but, I am gone. So... But for him, it's there's got to be more to it. He can't let go of it. Which she's maybe I just decided to end it all. Which she was you probably understand that better than anyone. It's just she's when you're on your boat right here, you're staring into the water. You've been thinking about sinking yourself. So that's why his subconscious is manifesting Percy in this way too, because it's right, if I did it, it's because, it's he doesn't have the answers to what was in Percy's head. All he can do is his mind is manifesting a version of Percy based on what he thinks he knows, while also pulling stuff from his subconscious, because he goes to Sonia and Sonia's right, the family should be able to heal, so maybe we should leave. And then Harry's no, maybe I can stay, maybe there's something more to it. And she's no, staying here isn't good for you. And he's yeah, you're right, we'll go. Because at first it's you see him almost want to say something, but he doesn't. I internalize that as and maybe this is me projecting, because, what I'm about to say, it's I think he's scared to tell her the truth about what's going through his mind. Because I don't talk about it a lot, but I've had those thoughts before. And I think, and once again, that's why I'm maybe I'm just projecting, but I think it's the thought that maybe you're you're scared of what people will look at you. If you bring up the fact is, I'm connecting with Percy because Percy has actually potentially has done it. She killed herself. So you admitting you've had similar thoughts. He's worried about how Sonia will look at him, because then people start walking around on eggshells. And I think people already kind of were in his life to an extent, but because he was always probably a little off compared to some of the people in his life. And so I think that maybe it's just you don't want Sonia's to look at him that way, but maybe it's also because he doesn't want her to feel hey, that if you're saying that you feel that way, it's because that person could also internalize their situation and being I'm not helping your circumstances. I thought we were helping each other through everything that went through with the Jamie thing, but it's no, I'm not helping you. The fact is that we were on our boat right here together and you were thinking about killing yourself. That, if that comes up, he's scared. Harry's just scared to open up in general. Because I think it's also, I think an aspect of it is a defense mechanism, because it's as long as you don't say it out loud, he can say it as much in his mind as he wants, but saying it out loud makes it real. Once again, maybe I'm projecting. That's just how I feel in that moment. So that's why he just kind of yeah, you're right, leaving the island's right. But it's even though he knows he can't forget this, he can't let it go because it's just not in his nature to. So he's making last minute goodbyes. He tells Meg, because Meg's oh, I want you to stay. They keep looking into this, but he's I gotta go. I gotta leave. I'm gonna leave in a couple of days. Lou's even saying like, no, I got things from here, but he thinks it's kind of wrapped up, so he's not really going to be pushing it the way Harry would. And also, like, Harry went, like, because there was a totem that was found with on Percy's body, and it's supposed to be like a North Star. It's supposed to point you to the heavens, but also to fish. So, like, a lot of fishermen have it. And Harry finds where it belonged, and it's off of Colin's boat. And it has the name Valerie on the back. And one of the people that works for the Muldoons comes over, and she's hesitant to really say anything, because it is back to the thing of, like, the Muldoons. You never really want to speak out against them, or you'll kind of incur their wrath. Or you just never want to be on their bad side. But it's like, you could tell immediately that when she was bringing up, like, oh yeah, there was like, yeah, Colin and Percy, they hung out a lot. And it's just like, they'd go on the boats by themselves, like, outside of just fishing stuff. But she was like, yeah, it's not my business, like, what they do. But Harry was like, wait, so you're saying there's something other than fish? So that's where you start creeping in an element and an idea that kind of gets perpetuated throughout the episode, hinting like, was there something going on between Colin and Percy? But there's that, and that gets solidified even more when they went to eat at the Lamb's restaurant, and Harry overhears CJ and his parents, in particular his dad, and CJ says that, like, the Muldoons keep pushing and pushing. It's just like, why? Because it turns out, like, their refrigerator or whatever was cut. So it's like, right, the Muldoons struck back because of what CJ might have done last episode. And for him, it's just like, no matter what, it's just like the Muldoons, like, everyone's town's scared of them. They get to do whatever they want to. What I think is interesting, and maybe this is me, his mom saying the line of, it's never easy losing a child. I'm like, because once again, CJ and Percy was like, if I tell you the truth, you're going to hate me. Now, part of me wonders, was it a secret kind of like Cora's repressed situation or Julian's suppressed situation or even Jamie's? But could it be like a thing of something that Percy repressed, as maybe she killed? Because I don't know if that's like if CJ's like an only child or something. But part of me was like, do you think like Percy, when she was younger or something, accidentally killed? Like, because my thought was like someone in her family killed someone from CJ's family, and that's kind of like the big, deep, dark secret. But then part of me is like, you don't think like Percy might have accidentally killed like CJ's like sibling or something, and she just didn't remember until now, and now she wanted to tell him, but she can just never do it because it's like, that's why I was like, if it was maybe, because my thought was always like, because she's a Muldoon, like the Muldoons must have done something to CJ's family, and so it's like, right, you'll hate me because I'm a Muldoon, and whatever my family did was terrible, that you'll hate me too as a Muldoon. But it felt a lot more personal. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you'll hate me because I'm Muldoon. It's like, you'll hate me because Percy did something. So that's why I'm wondering, but that line made me think of that, like, oh, it sounds like you're talking from personal experience, or maybe it doesn't necessarily connect to CJ. Maybe they lost a child before, and maybe CJ was unaware, maybe he was too young at the time to remember, and maybe that correlates to maybe why they were so protective of CJ, because they went through they've lost a child before, and they saw how CJ was spiraling, especially later on, because his mom is thinking back to like CJ before recently, where he's like, yeah, like, here's the fan, like, oh, let's make the restaurant, and it's like, oh, we could name it the Golden Fish, but yeah, when people, like, you know, when he's like, oh, when white people hear that, they'll just think this certain thing, and she's thinking back on that moment, because she just looks at, like, her son's not the same, like, that bright-eyed boy that, you know, I mean, this was, you know, not just, like, forever ago, it was recent, because he looks about the same, but it's like, that bright-eyed son of hers, like, that, it's just like, she saw so much life in his eyes, and I think now she just sees so much de-stress that she's worried about him. But that's what kind of instills that in me, like, there's definitely something there, that his parents are either hiding from him, or there's still something there. But CJ's dad ended up seeing Colin and Percy, and he didn't like what he saw. He was like, he's like, their relationship seems weird. But then he also makes this line where he told CJ, he's like, hey, I know you liked her, but she wasn't who you thought she was. And then I'm almost like, you don't. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I was about to say, like, not let you find out something where it's like, maybe CJ's not the Muldoon that you. No, I was like, no, I don't know. I was wondering, like, is it a thing of like she's not the Muldoon that they think she is? Like, maybe I was about to say like not less like CJ's dad had an affair with like CJ's dad had an affair with Percy's mom, or just like maybe Percy's actually a Muldoon, but they gave him up to the Lambs, and that's what I'm like. I'm thinking too much about it. I'm throwing out wild, crazy stuff because I'm like, there's something there, and I'm just not sure what. It's probably one of those things, like, if you go back, like, when you're finished with the season, going back, you're like, right, they laid the foundation. It's just, you didn't know just how to fit the puzzle pieces together type of thing. It's just, it's like that. It's just like, you feel like you're, like, sometimes I feel like I'm almost there, but I don't feel like, then I'm probably going to get to the end of the season. I'm like, no, I was, like, way off bases. But, you know, that's the fun of, like, the theorizing and stuff of it all. But I'm just not quite sure what to make of it. But when the time, well, as they're getting ready to leave and stuff like that, you have someone broke in to the house, and obviously this strikes a chord with Sonya because she's like, we got to get out of here now. He's like, oh, let me check the perimeter, like maybe stick around for a little bit. He's like, no. This was triggering for her because it was a reminiscent of the Jamie situation. So she wants to leave immediately the next day, and they're getting ready, they're packed and everything. But Harry's like, I can't go, just give me a couple of days. She's like, no, like, you don't need to stay here. She's like, you can't let this go, can you? She's like, that is one of the beautiful elements of him, but it's also the sad and scary element because he gets so obsessive. But for him, he's like, I just can't let this go. He's like, I'd never forgive myself if I tried to get him. She's like, but you could, you can just, for her, it's like, it's a choice. You can choose to, but him's like, but not for me, it's not. You know, and for her, she says this interesting line where she's like, I don't know what it is, but it feels like you're trying to make up for something. And part of me wonders, is it just a Jamie thing, or is it just maybe it's a combination of the Jamie thing and his own past of, like, you know, everything with his mom, he has regrets about, I think, how he handled that. And once again, he was a kid at the time, but I think that stayed with him. But going back to his hometown in season 2, season 3, like unburying a lot of that for him, I think that's what kind of, I think all of that sent him. All of this has unearthed a lot for him. Like the over the course of this series, he's unearthed a lot about himself that I think maybe that's what he's trying to make up for. Like I said, maybe it's a Jamie thing, and even the Jamie thing is just a byproduct of this childhood, is where like it all stems from. But it's like she said, you're trying to make up for something, and Sonya's like, no, it's okay, Harry, I'll be fine. Like, but for her, it's like, yeah, they're over, because she's like, I can't just keep doing this. And I just think, would it be better if Harry explained? And I don't think he's in a place where he feels ready to explain. He can't really explain it. And even personally inside of his head, like, you can't just get on a boat and just leave. But he can't. And he shows up at, you know, after like the funeral, or rather they're about to head and bury her body. They at the wake or the thing at the church. And Sean was so distraught, like he was blaming everyone for Percy's death, and so Colin had to pull him down from the off the stand when he was, you know, talking. And so Harry goes to the thing afterwards at the house. I guess that was kind of like the wake or whatever, but like, you know, like with the foods and everything. Obviously, he runs into that same lady that works for the Muldoon. She was like, she was like, oh, I wasn't friends with Percy. I just showed up so the Muldoons would know that I showed up, because it's like, it'd be too much trouble if they didn't think I showed up. But he's seeing the whole thing with Colin. Like, he's keeping his eye on Colin because he's starting to get that feeling of like, there's something there. Like, there might have been a relationship going on. Like, not just an uncle and niece relationship, an intimate relationship, you know? But interestingly enough, he goes over to Sean, and it's like, for him, it's just like all these people coming up to him, telling him how sorry they are. But for him, he blames everyone. He's like, everyone is like, he's like, honestly, like, you, Harry, might be the only innocent person here. And he's like, what do you mean by that? It's like, it's that situation of what was going on with Percy. Everyone turned their head, tried to pretend like everything was fine. But it's like, we all knew the truth. We just chose to ignore it. We tried to pretend like that wasn't the case. So when he's talking to Meg later, when he kind of insinuates maybe there was something between Colin and Percy, and she was like, no, that can't be the case. Because it's like, he's like, you said that you went to pick up Percy with Colin, right? It's like, they were spending a lot of time together. It's like, yeah, they were close. It's like, yeah, but she's like, don't even go there. But he also overhears Colin talking about something, and it was on the boat, and Harry snuck aboard, but Colin took off on it. And like the moment he caught Harry on the boat, I was like, this is going to be weird. I was almost like, are you going to try and kill him? It's like, no, doing that. But it's like, no. He explains, like, at least he tries to say, like, nothing happened between him and Percy like that. That basically he was trying to have, I guess he's a religious person, which I was like, oh, I know it's like why, like, but my brain does what it does. And I'm like, oh, I just think it's interesting. Like, maybe Michael Mosley's like just the actor himself is a religious person. Maybe not. But it's just interesting, like, it's, well, because, like, if you're unaware, in Ozark, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think, is Ozark the first thing I ever saw him in? I feel like, no, Castle actually was. I think I talked about that before. Castle's actually, because I watched Castle. He played like a very specific arc of a serial killer on Castle. I think that was the first thing I ever saw Michael Mosley in. But like, he played a pastor in Ozark, and there's going to be a religious person, but that's what he was doing. He was trying to fix Percy's relationship with God. It's like, right, you need to, you got to fix yourself with him. But for her, she felt like it just felt off. Like, she felt like it was hypocritical. She didn't feel like it was going to fix anything. But he wanted her to recite the passages. But for him, it's like, I wanted to save her, but she was beyond saving because someone had already gotten to her. Because at one point, she was like, hey, can I stay here? Please don't tell Grandma about this, But then, like, he starts seeing, like, the drawings and everything. Harry interprets that as like you were upset because you tried to fill her head with what you wanted her head to be filled with, but she found someone else, and it's like you wanted it to be you. So it still could be applicable that something was there, or maybe he's trying to fill some hole in his heart, because he's like, basically the justification is like, I am like your father. I was more of a father to you than your own father. But then he calls her like an ungrateful bitch and everything, and she's like, well, don't talk to me like you're my father. You're not. No one ever, I didn't ask you to like raise me or anybody. No, I'm sorry I was this big burden on you. Like, no one asked you to take it upon yourself. But because what he looked at what she did, it's like, for him, it's like her mind was polluted by someone else. But it's like, is that really the issue? Or is it because you believe that your way, like you were instilling your beliefs and trying to shove it down her throat, but it didn't give her the answer she wanted. She found those answers somewhere else that kind of helped maybe like alleviate some of what she was feeling, making her understand a little bit of what she was feeling. So Colin pushed him off the boat, and he's like shit, and he drives away because it's like, right, I don't want to get in trouble for this. Harry swims back, and he tries to remember all the letters, and I love that, like, he puts the wrong letter there, and then Percy's like, did you really remember that right? It's like, there's an A there. Trust me, I remembered. I'm like, that's ironic that your mind is like doing that, manifesting. It's like, yes, you're talking to your brain, but your brain's like, I remember. It's like, I think that's supposed to be like the twisted joke of it, is that. And it's like, oh, your perception that this Percy that your mind created is like, oh, I remember it better than you, but then he remembers, tying it back, interestingly enough, to the thing that Sonia was referencing at the when in the first episode, kind of like a tour guide for the island, and he follows that island, and there he finds a whole bunch of like ritual stuff, like time and time again. It seems like maybe it's always 5 objects, because I'm curious if this that North Star thing was one too, because Harry lined everything up and then he puts it there, because like that's the only one that has 4. Because when Harry was thinking about the second one that him and Lou found, but he came along, it was 5 objects. So maybe this one, because once again, like, these objects are tied to very specific memories and people. So I still feel like we never really got an answer for, like, we only got answers for 2 of those totems. We never got an answer for the other 3. Well, now we have an idea of the other 2 now, because like we have 3 that we know where the North Star came from. Not 100% what it correlate to, because the name Valerie was written on the back of it, and it meant, I don't know if that was supposed to be in correlation to like the Bible verses and stuff that he was reading, because he was like, yeah, I have no idea what it's about. So I don't think there's anything Bible related about a Valerie. I mean, once again, I'm ignorant on the Bible. I don't think so, but I'm like, so it sounds like it is a person. I'm wondering, was that lady that he bumped into that works for the Muldoons, is she Valerie? But it was enough that like the moment his grandma, because his grandma, not his grandma, but his mom, Meg, doesn't know anything about it. So I guess she talked to Colin about it at that time. And Colin was like, yeah, you're asking my mom about Valerie, like, what do you know about that? Like, how do you know that name? So it's like he started getting a little defensive about that. Because we did see, like, because Harry did follow him to, like, what I think was a support group or some sort. Like, maybe it's like a religious support group. It's not like a... At first I was like, is it like an AA type of thing? Which he did say, like, drinking and stuff. So, but I mean, those can correlate. Like, some of those type of meetings can be, like, at the bottom of, like, a church or something. Sometimes, not always, but there could be a religious angle to, like, hey, making sure you get past this, that you're able... it could be a religious support group that, like, helps deal with people who have that, so to deal with his drinking and stuff like that, because he's like, oh, like, sometimes she makes me so mad. Obviously, it seems like that was their last last time together, and he said that to her as kind of what he was implying on what he did. But he's like, oh, I want to drink, but I think to fill that void of the drinking, like, he found God instead. Like, I think that's what that might be a part of. But circling back to it, Harry, like, found all of these, like, little rituals, like, items set up. So I'm assuming every one of them was Percy's. And he ends up finding this little hut that I guess was kind of Percy's home away from home. It's part of, like, all of this. Because it pointed Harry in the right direction. And he goes there, he finds, like, a picture of, like, a shadowy creature, which is that person who has control over her. And obviously on the back it says Pimo Dunes of Percy. So I'm assuming this is tied into the ladies that were dancing naked by the water a couple episodes back. They have some insight into this. I don't think they're the ones that filled her head necessarily, but I think they try to point her in the right direction, and maybe she got, like, drawn in by the wrong person, and that sent her down this lane of, like, whoever this is that has so much control over her. So... because I forgot where it was. There was one more time where was it when Harry was following Colin? I don't remember if that was it, because he ran into CJ's dad at one point in time, and CJ's dad, I think he was looking at Colin. I think it was at the funeral. At that point, he had already talked to CJ and his dad, and CJ's dad ended up being there at the funeral. I was like, why would you come here? Like, CJ coming here would make a lot of sense, but that's why I'm like, are we going to find out that Sean actually isn't even her biological dad and CJ's dad actually? That's why I'm like, is that why they were kind of like, she's not who you thought she was? Is that why they were kind of against the relationship? Are we kind of... is it kind of a Polly and Jason type of situation from Riverdale? If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So I was wondering if it's something of that nature. I'll go ahead and spoil it. Like, if you don't want to talk about... Jason and Polly ended up being cousins. So there was kind of like an incestual element to it. So I was curious, like, that's what I was kind of implying, like, I mean, which is like, Jesus, either way, it's like, either it was her and her uncle, her and CJ doing it was probably the bad thing too, because it's like, we're related. So it's like, man, there's potential incest at the wazoo in this situation. I don't know. Like, once again, those are just my thoughts. I just kind of throwing out there just because of everything that went down in this episode. Just kind of sparked, like, that being my thought process for now. We'll see. I'm assuming this season's only 8 episodes. I mean, you never know, because shows will still do that, where it's like, oh, every other season's a certain number of episodes, and this one season will be the one that's not. But I'm assuming this one's going to be 8 episodes as well, so we're at the halfway point to the season, potentially, if the episode numbers didn't change this season. So, still quite a bit to discover. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.